In this video, we are going to go through the difference between whoever and whomever. And so maybe you're thinking, hey, but you're saying who versus whom. I am, because before we talk about whoever versus whomever, we need to revisit who versus whom. And if you haven't already, you should go back to Grammar Basics and watch the video on who versus whom. But for a little review, we have here, he was the teacher who or whom influenced me the most. Which one is it? Well, when you look here to determine whether it's who or him, or who or whom rather, you want to look to see whether this who or whom is the subject or the object of the sentence. So, he was the teacher. Now, the teacher in this case is the subject of the sentence. The me is the object. Therefore, because we're dealing with the subject, we are dealing with who. In B, he was the teacher who or whom I admired the most. So, now what's happening? And don't say, oh yeah, it's the same sentence because it begins with he was the teacher. So obviously it's the same. Who's the subject here? Well, I admire. Who do I admire? The teacher. Aha, which teacher? So, and then you can see that the teacher becomes the object. The I is the subject. And if you're unsure, ask yourself, is the teacher, would you put he or would you put whom when you say I admire he the most or him the most? And because it's the latter, him the most, you know it's whom. You know that him is the object. But if you went to the first sentence, who would it be if it's a he or him? Well, if I ask you which teacher influenced you the most, would you say him influenced me the most? No, you would say he. Therefore, you know it is who. But always use the subject and object first before you use the he-him rule. Now, let's move on to whoever and whomever. Now, who versus whom is pretty difficult. Not the easiest thing in the world. You'd have to hunt for the subject or object, figure out where who is ending up in the sentence. But whoever and whomever is actually much more complicated. So let's take a look at it. Whomever ends up helping you with your homework should have a strong grasp of calculus. Well, if the answer is whoever, who if it's he? He ends up helping you. We know that he ends up would be, well, he is the subject, and therefore we are dealing with whoever. Pretty easy. Now look at D. Whomever you end up helping should have at least the fundamental knowledge of calculus. So I will end up helping him. Okay, so if it's him, because you are the subject doing the verb, you can see that we have the object here, and therefore whomever is correct. Okay, think you got it? Let's take a final look here. And I told you that was complicated, and we'll see why. I will put my trust in. Now, when we see the preposition, the first thing that should go, oh, that's obviously object of the preposition. Therefore, it is whomever. However, that is not the case. Why? Well, I will put my trust in something. And so we have a noun here. We don't just have a noun, though, in this case. We have what's called a noun phrase. So you can also go to the video on noun phrases to learn more about those. But in the case with the noun phrase here, we do not want to start the noun phrase off with the object, because here the subject is the one who has the most experience, and therefore we use whoever. Now, you may not get that, and you know what? I would recommend going back and trying to understand it, starting with the who and whom. Go through, make sure, no matter what, you understand who versus whom. Understand the whoever and the whomever in the preceding slide. But after watching this, if you just don't get it, please do not feel frustrated. Two reasons why. One is, many feel, this isn't just, people on the street, but even in schools, the whoever, whomever distinction is kind of not as important anymore. It's falling apart. And so I wouldn't go so far as to call it archaic or something that we no longer pay attention to, but it's really not that big of a deal. Secondly, you're probably not going to even encounter or use it in your own writing anyway. So why does it matter, really? If you can, essentially, if you don't even have to use this, then don't worry, but please try. Get it? Because it's interesting. When you understand it, then you say, oh, I get noun phrases now. It shows that you're developing a complex understanding of grammar. Again, if you do not get it, though, do not hit your head up against the wall and go, oh, I never get grammar. I'll never get it. I hate grammar. Because you know what? This is a really nuanced, subtle rule that you're probably not going to encounter anyway. And you should love grammar because of all these other lessons are much more important and hopefully much more straightforward.